Okay, good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you are audible.
So, great. So it's already 4:05. So we'll get started. Other people can join in as they come along. Okay. So yeah, let's get started. So okay. Good evening, everyone. Today will be the talk is titled Kegel 101. This is part of the weekly sessions that we have every Saturday, 4 to 5. Now, this week we'll be discussing Kegel, and by the end of the talk, my goal is to convince all the beginners to start using Kegel if they are not already using it. Okay? So, if that can be accomplished, then it would be a success for me during this talk. Now, before we actually start with the session, I have a few announcements to make. First is that we'll be having a separate QA session at the end of the talk. So I'll request everyone to keep their mics on mute during the session, so as to make sure there's no disturbance during the session. Okay, so it would be great if everyone can keep their mics on mute. Okay, so yeah, okay. So Kaggle. Now Kaggle is home for a lot of data scientists across the globe. They compete in competitions together. They learn from each other, and they also share their learning. But the competition, the platform Kaggle is not only good for data scientists, but is also a good place for a lot of people who are aspiring to become data scientists. So the platform has tried a lot of different things to make sure that it's welcoming to the beginners, to people who are just starting with Kaggle, and to make it as easy as possible so that beginners can get started with Kaggle. Okay. So it's not just a great place for data scientists across the globe, but it's also a good place where beginners or aspiring data scientists can learn from the best in the world and like grow their skills together with them. Okay. So like this is a general idea of Kaggle. Now I'm not assuming any prerequisites for this talk. So particularly for Kaggle, we don't need any prerequisites. So it's okay if you have no background in data science, Python, or any other thing related to this domain. Okay? But there are a few prerequisites regarding data science and ML. Okay? So whenever you are working on a data science or a machine learning project, the first thing that you need is a software stack. That means you either need to have a Python or R setup in your system, in your laptop or in your desktop. Second is you need a packet manager, which will make it easy for you to install and manage your libraries, all the different libraries required for data science and machine learning. And lastly, you'll need a IDE for interactive programming. Now, interactive programming is very different from other traditional approaches of programming. In interactive programming, you basically write a piece of code and you look at the output immediately based on the output, you write next piece of code, and hence it's called interactive programming. That means you're interacting with the code as you write it. Okay, so for data science, generally Python or R is used. So first you'll have to install the language. Next is there are many different packages, libraries, dependencies that are installed. So you'll also need a package manager. I'm a Python user, so we'll end up using either Anaconda, or just if you want the package manager, you can use Conda. And talking about IDE for interactive programming, the most famous one is Jupyter Notebooks. So you want at least these basic things in the software front to be installed on your system or in your device before you can start with data science. Okay. Now, the most important thing for data science or machine learning or deep learning or AI in general is data. So you will need tons and tons of data, and for that you need a very fast data storage device or hardware. Okay. So if you use HDD, traditional hardware, like hard disk, they are very slow, and it will take a lot of time for IO. So it's recommended that we use NVMe or like recent hard disk from Samsung or some like other reputed companies which provide up to couple of GBs of read and write speed per second. So fast data storage device is very important for data science or machine learning. And next is GPU for faster training. When you will be writing code that will take huge amounts of data, and then you will be training models. If you just process the complete thing in your CPU, it might end up taking multiple days. So you need GPUs which will uh, help you in training these bigger models much faster and much easily. So these are the prerequisites for data science and ML. You'll need some software, also you'll need some hardware. Once these prerequisites are met, then only you can actually start learning Python, or sorry, start learning data science or machine learning. These are the prerequisites, hence they have to be completed even before you write a single piece of code. Now we'll see how these prerequisites are met by Kaggle as a platform. Okay, so I'll take you to the website itself. This is how the website looks. Let me first start the same website or the same website in a private window. This is how you will see it if you don't already have an account. So to create an account, you can simply register with Google, or you can register with your email. So if I click register with Google, it will ask you simply your Google email name and password, and your account will be created. As soon as you create an account, you will have an interface like this, where you have your personal details here, your competitions and your notebooks and other stuff. You will have the navigation sidebar, and this is your feed where you will see everything. Okay. So if you click on code, and then if you click on new notebook, it will take a couple of seconds and start a new notebook for you. Okay. Okay, so it's still setting up the session. Session started. That means we can start working with it. Okay, great. So first thing that we'll have to do is we'll have to select the language from here. By default, for me, the language is Python. So I'll not change anything. I'll simply click outside. Once you have selected the language, then you can see this is a environment which is very similar to Jupyter Notebook. Just like any other Jupyter Notebook, it will consist of a lot of cells. So I can create a new cell, I can create new code cell, I can create new markdown cell. So if you are already aware with Jupyter Notebooks, it will consist of a lot of cells, and each cell, it can either be a code cell where you can write Python code, say print hello, or you can see the output here, or it can be a markdown cell where you can write markdown. So this is markdown. This is markdown code, and your complete notebook will consist of a lot of such cells. Each cell could be either Markdown or it could be a code cell where you can write Python code. Okay. Now, Jupyter Notebook also supports this amazing feature where you can run a command line code, command line like query or bash commands as well. So I can say all you have to do is all you have to do is simply add an exclamation sign, and then you can start writing your shell commands or bash commands. I'll say ls, which will list all the files in my current directory. I can also say ls minus la. So this will list them in a list order, and I can see this is my hidden directory, this is another hidden directory, and this is the notebook source code. I can also do this. So I'm asking, show me the previous directory and its content. So these are all the previous directory and their contents. I can say pwd to check my current working directory. Okay. So it's /kaggle/working. This is my current working directory. So now you have a notebook where you can write Markdown, which will support HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Then you have code cells where you can either write Python code or you can write bash commands. Bash commands will start with exclamation. Okay. Now you can use these bash commands. So as we can see, the internet is on. That means we can download data sets and stuff from the internet. So I can run this thing, git clone, and then I can paste any git repo here. This will clone the git repository for me in my working directory. I can also run commands like wget or curl. These are all commands to download the data. We can also run commands like fetch, which will create a new file. So I can say train.csv and I'll run it. This will create a new file. So if I do ls, I'll see train.csv here. Okay. So these are a few basic things that you need to know about the Jupyter Notebook provided by Kaggle. But most of the things are exactly similar or exactly same as your traditional Jupyter Notebooks. Also, most of the command shortcuts work. So if I press AA, it will create a new cell. If I press B, it will create a new cell below. If I press D twice, it will delete cell. So most of the shortcuts, they also work. You can merge cell, you can split cell, and all the shortcuts from Jupyter Notebook can be used here as well. Okay. So this is the interactive programming environment that we were talking about, which is a exact copy or replica of Jupyter Notebook environment. Okay. Once we are done with this, so next important thing is to run commands where you are going to access the web. You have to make sure your internet is turned on. This is basically like turning the Wi-Fi option on or off in your laptop. You are just saying keep allow this notebook to have access to the internet, yes or no. If you just turn it off, then commands like git clone and other things will not work. If you turn it on, that means all those commands will start working. Okay, great. So we have a Jupyter Notebook environment or something similar to that to work with to write our code in. You can also select R, and then the notebook will restart, and now this time it will have a R backend. Okay, so yeah, this is the first requirement. Now next immediate requirement that we have when we are working with data sets is adding our own data. Okay, so in Kaggle you can simply click here, add data, and you get this pop-up where you can do a lot of different things. So here you can see all the data sets that are available, and you can also search data sets. Next is competition data sets. So this will give you a list of ongoing competitions, and you can add any competition data set. So currently I'm working on this competition, so I'll simply click on add, and now you can see under input this data set has been added. Okay. Next is if some of your or other notebooks for which the outputs are generated, you can add them as well. So say your notebook basically takes raw data set and process it, and the processed file is saved as output. So now you can add those files here. Also, you can add your own work. So these are all the data sets that I have created in the past. So I can add any of these data sets. And yes, like these are all the tags. You can add your favorite data sets. You can add CSV data sets and other stuff. Okay. So I'll simply go here and add, say, I'll add plant models. As you can see here, it's downloading the data set and it will reflect here. Okay. So you can see plant models here. And another option is to upload. Now, this is important to remember that in Kaggle, you cannot directly upload your data. First, you'll have to create a data set, and then you'll have to add that data set to this notebook. So here, first I'll have to, like, as soon as I click on upload, it will ask me to create a new data set. Now I can drag and drop any file and like drop it here. It will upload it, and then I'll have to provide the name of the data set. And when I'll click on create, it will go and create the data set, and then it will add it here. Okay. So there's no option of directly dragging and dropping something in this notebook or in this environment. You'll have to first create a data set, and then you'll have to add that data set to this notebook here. Okay. We'll see the advantages of this approach in a minute, but this is how you are going to add new data. Okay. So it's pretty easy. You just click on upload, drag all the file, give a name to your data set, and click on create. It will create the data set and automatically add it here. So it's not very different, but this is one extra step where you have to first create your data set, and then it will be automatically added. Okay. So these are all the different ways. One thing that I use very frequently is search by URL. So I'll basically go on Kaggle, search for some data. So I'll go and say COVID data. So I got all these data sets. Okay. So this is by Allen Institute. This is 9 GB and it has these many upvotes, which is really good. This is by another. Okay. So what I can do is I'll copy this URL and I'll come here and I'll paste the URL here. You'll see the data set is reflected. I'll click on add. It will go and download the data set and add it here. Okay. So these are all the different ways how you can add your own data. I'll quickly revise. So competition data, you can select this, add any competition data. You can upload your data. You can search using URL. And if you have already uploaded and created the data set, then you can just click here and it will list down all your data sets. Okay. So this is how you add data to the environment that you are working with. Okay. One important thing to note is all the data sets which are present here, if you see them, I'll press ls and you cannot find them here. You can drag over any of these things and click on this icon to copy the path. This is what the path looked like. So you have to go to the previous directory, then go inside input, and then this is the name of the folder where you will find all the data related to this competition or related to this data set. And same, instead of Shopee product matching, you will have to say plant models to access everything that is there inside plant models. Plant models. So these are all the models that I have trained and uploaded in this data set. Okay. So this is very important to note that everything that is present inside input is always in read only mode. That means you cannot change the data set by writing some Python code here, and you cannot delete this file, you cannot update this file, or you cannot do anything with it. It's always in read only mode. That means you are only allowed to read it. It's immutable. You cannot change it. In case you want to change it, I'll click here open a new tab. If I have access to this data set, since this data set is created by me, I have access to it. I can go and I can say new version, and then I can remove the files which I don't want or add new files which I want to upload. Okay? But I'll have to do it from here. I cannot update anything from here. Everything inside your input directory is in read only mode. That means it's immutable. You cannot change it. Okay. So this is how you add data. Now, okay. Okay. So this is very similar to your normal working environment where you, as soon as you want to work on a data science project, you will create you'll install all the Python packages that you need. You will start a new Jupyter Notebook instance. Then you will place all your data inside data folder or some other folder, and then you will start reading them and like accessing them one after the other. Okay, so it's not very different. Only thing is the UI is somewhat different from what we are used to. So we generally use File Explorer from our Windows. So I'll go here, Anaconda projects, Kaggle competition. I'll create a new folder. I'll name it something, dummy, and then inside this folder I'll create another new folder called data. I'll create new folder called notebooks, and here I'll now start a Jupyter Notebook instance, and then I'll try to access everything that is present inside my data folder. So this is how you generally work. So instead of this, in our local environment, the command is like this: path is equal to / data, and then whatever the folder name is. So I can directly have my data there. So I can say train.csv, and if you have multiple folders, so I can say models, and there I'll have all my models. So this will become model path, and so on. So yeah, this is how you upload the data and start working with the data sets. Okay. Another important thing to note is, as soon as you create the notebook, it is good advice. A good thing to do is to rename your notebook. So I'll say Kaggle 101, and I'll add a rocket symbol. Just click outside the box and the name will be saved. Okay. So great. Everything else is same as your other Python notebooks or Jupyter notebooks. Exactly the same. So just to give you an example, I'll simply say import pandas as PD, and then I'll delete this cell. I'll need this cell. So I'll simply say df is equal to df dot read and csv, and here I'm supposed to pass the path. So I'll come here, click on copy path to copy the path to this file, and I'll paste it here, and then I'll say df dot head. Oh, this should be PD. So this is your data set. These are all the columns that are present, and these are the first 5 records. Okay, so yeah, this is the first thing. Now another thing is, once you have written some code and you have all these huge data sets, your code will take that data set as input, process it, and give you some output. So it could be a process like cleaning your data. It could be another process like training a model, and your model might end up taking 8 hours or 10 hours to train. Okay. So all the files which are generated by your code, they'll be saved here in the working directory. So you can already see there's something called train.csv, but you can, since you cannot save anything here, you cannot update these data sets. You will have to save your output files in working directory. So this is how you generally work. So say I want to take sample where if, and then I'll select first 1000 records, and then I'll say copy. I'm processing my data, and then this is some sample file that I'm creating. Processing is just taking first 1000 rows, but it can be any other thing like adding new extra columns, cleaning, like removing these Unicode things, or cleaning the data sets, or adding the path instead of just file name, adding the complete path here or anything else. Okay, and this is, say, this is my output file. Now what I can do is I'll simply say sample.csv, and then I'll save processed in.csv, and I'll say index equals to false. Now when I run this command, I'll click here for refresh, and you can see the file is generated here. Now I can click on these three dots to download the file. Okay, I can click on these three dots to download the file. Now anything which is present inside your working directory, that is mutable. That means I can make changes to these files. I can delete this file. So instead of touch, I can say rm, and this will delete the file. You can see the file is deleted, but you cannot run this command here because you don't have permissions to update these data sets. This is how you basically start a new Jupyter Notebook instance. This is how you add new data set, and all the processed files or the output files from your code will be saved in working directory. You can simply click on these three dots to download the file. So this is all that you need to know about Jupyter Notebooks, as well as loading or adding your dataset to the Kaggle kernel. Just a few cautions. One is, a lot of people call them notebooks. In Kaggle, previously they were called kernels. Now they are called code. So don't confuse if I'm using these words interchangeably. They all mean the same thing. Okay, great. So yeah, just a few tips on navigating through the interface. One is, you can download this notebook. You can change the language to R from here as well, and you can also change the editor type. You can say I want a Python script. This will give you a interface like this, Python script interface. That means you will be writing everything from top to down, and then you will be running this script. So I'll switch it back to notebook, and you can save the notebook and other stuff. You can also say new notebook, and this will create a new notebook from here itself. You can also upload a notebook. So I can say open notebook. This will ask me to drag and drop a notebook that I have in my system, and then I'll say upload. So it will take a couple of seconds to start your notebook. Okay. In edit, you can move a cell up or down or delete it. In view, you can change it to dark theme. So usually if you're using it at night, recommended to use dark theme. Next is, you can run all the cells before, selection, after, and other stuff, add-ons, and some helps for docs. Okay, and you can change the language from here, and you can turn on and off the internet from here. Okay, then here are some recommended environments. So this is the most stable environment. That means you will be getting the most stable version of Python or R and all the libraries that you are using. And here it's the latest environment. That means you will get Python 3.10. So if you want to experiment with Walrus operator or other things, you can simply click on this, and it will give you the latest Python environment. Okay, so yeah, these are all the basic things that you need to know. How to upload your data, how to take your process data, download them in your local systems. Okay, one last extra add-on that is there is, under accelerator, you can simply click and you can see that there's an option for GPU and there's an option for TPU. So if I click on GPU, it will restart my notebook. Okay, so it will like download all these data sets again. Okay, so by that time I'll give you a brief overview. So Kaggle every week gives you roughly 40 hours of GPU. So sometimes it's 38 hours, sometimes it's 36 hours, sometimes it's 42 or 45 hours. Okay, I don't know on what basis it's randomly selected, but every week you will get 36 hours of 40 hours of GPU compute approximately. Okay, so this week I got 36 hours. Now the cycle for GPU is Saturday morning 5 a.m. to next Saturday morning 5 a.m. So today it's Saturday and it's 4 p.m. So according to Indian Standard Time, my GPU has restarted in the morning 5 o'clock. Okay, so as you can see that I have used 0 minutes from my Jupyter quota GPU quota yet. So now it's already 1 minute. Okay, here you can see there's an option for HDD, CPU, RAM, and as well as GPU. So if you click on it, you can see the complete thing. It gives you 16 GBs of RAM, GPU memory, and 0% of it is used yet. It gives you 13 GB of CPU RAM, and the hard disk is 20 GB. Okay, now this 20 GB is only for your working directory, and all these data sets are stored somewhere else. So it's already 39 GBs. Okay, so this is how it works. You are just a click away from GPU. You can simply click on TPU to get TPU as well. Okay, so this is taking a minute or so to start the session, but this is how it works. You just have to click on accelerator and change it to GPU or TPU. Okay, to get a working GPU instance. Okay, last thing that you need to know to work with Kaggle notebooks is saving them. So you can simply click here and you'll get a drop down. You can write the name of the version, which is optional. Then you will have a couple of options. So one is quick run. So this is very self-descriptive. Save the version of the notebook the way you currently, the way it currently looks. So whatever you see here will be saved as it is, just like you do it in your local notebooks. You just press Ctrl S to save the notebook, and next time you open it, the exact state of the notebook will be saved, not the internal variables and stuff, but all the input output, the way it looks, will be uh, retained or saved as it is. Okay, okay, that is the first option. Second is save and run all. So here what it will do is it will first click on this option. Sorry, it will restart the clean session, and it will then run all the cells. Once all the cells are executed, then it will save the notebook as it is. So that means you have completed your work. Now if you press save and run all, then it will remove all the outputs, run all the cells again, and then save it. So if your notebook takes say 6 hours to run, then save and run all approach will take 6+ hours to save the notebook, because it will be executing all the cells in your notebook again. But if you don't do it, if you say quick save, then it will take say a couple of seconds to save your notebook, because it won't be executing your notebook again. Okay, the good thing is if you run with save and run all, then it will run the complete notebook, and you will have access to all the output files once the notebook is saved. Say for example, I'll show you my notebook. So okay, so this is one notebook that I have created. I have saved it, and if you look at the output of the notebook, then this file was generated. So now you will have access to this file. But if you click on quick save option, then you won't have access to these output files. Okay, these output files are basically files from your working directory. Okay, so this is how you save your notebooks. One good thing is you can write the model code here, see if all your code is working, and then at the end you can simply say my model is ResNet 18. This will take a couple of minutes to train. Once I have tested all the code, I'll simply replace it with ResNet 101 and save the notebook with this option, save and run all, and save. What it will do is it will take 6 hours to run this notebook, and at the end I'll write a command to say resnet 101 dot 101 dot save, and the model name will be resnet 101 dot pickle. So I'll be saving this thing. So now I can go do my work and come in the evening and see if my notebook has executed or not. If it has executed, then I can come here, click on output, and I can come here and I'll see resnet 101.pickle. I can simply download the model from here and use it for inference or for my personal work. You don't have to keep your notebook open throughout. You can have it running for 8 hours, 6 hours in the background and then download the output files directly. So this is how it works. Now, we one piece of advice is you can see the draft session. It's 6 minutes. With every minute, this number will keep increasing, and one session can only run for 9 hours at one go. So you can keep this notebook open for 9 continuous hours. You have to make sure your internet connection is always available. You cannot turn off the internet connection. You'll have to make sure you have access to the net throughout. But this notebook at once can run only for 9 hours, not more than that. So if you have a job which takes say 16 hours, 20 hours, or 32 days to train, then these notebooks are not for you. So Jupyter GPU 40 hours per week, which is more than enough. If you use it 7 days of the week, then it is roughly 6 hours per day, which is a lot of GPU time. And if that doesn't meet your requirement, you can easily go and use Google Colab as well. So you can have GPUs for free throughout. And for this session, the maximum time is 9 continuous hours. So you can stop the notebook in between and restart it again. You can click here to stop the session. You can click here to factory reset and restart the session again. These are all the details that you need to know. Now, if we come back to our PPT and check the prerequisites, so Kaggle makes it super easy by providing you a few click options for all these prerequisites. First, for GPU, there's a drop down in accelerator. Just click on the drop down, select GPU or TPU, and it will give you access to those hardware. For fast storage, all you have to do is click on add dataset, and then you have multiple options, like you can add competition dataset, you can add your personal dataset, you can add a dataset by searching it using its URL, or you can upload your own dataset. Okay, and it's fast. The data storage that they are using, that is quite fast. So Automattic, you have free unlimited data storage. Okay, talking about software, one is they provide you with Jupyter Notebook like environment. Second is you can also run bash commands. Okay, so automatically package manager is taken care of. And third is Python or R setup. So that is just a drop down under language. You select either you want Python or R environment. Okay, this will restart the notebook and give you that environment or that backend. So coming back to this, if you see which Python, so this is the Python that it's using, conda bin Python. This is the Python command which is been called. So now you can run commands like conda. So this means conda is working. So I can say conda install and some package name, or I can use pip install and ping. This will go on the net and it will download this package for me. So you won't get a good UI interface for adding all the extra packages, but all you have to do is make sure your internet connection is on, and then you can use pip or conda commands with an exclamation to install these packages. Okay, so this requirement or prerequisite of package manager is also met and taken care by Kaggle very well for you. Okay, so this is how Kaggle is able to meet all these prerequisites. Now, there's this myth going on or floating around about Kaggle, that Kaggle is equal to competitions. But trust me, Kaggle is much more than competitions. When it first started, competitions were the only things that you were allowed to do there. But now it has grown into a much more mature platform. And competition, alongside competitions, you can do many other things, and it's a great place for learning. Okay, so uh, these are the things that I use Kaggle for. Now, to test or to learn new libraries or GitHub code. So if there's some new library that I want to learn or to understand, I'll not install it directly in my laptop. Sometimes installing those libraries can be a burden, and sometimes those libraries can be really big, and sometimes the dependency tree can be huge. So you'll end up downloading 600 MBs of new libraries, packages, and dependencies from the net. So to just try a new library, I'll open a Kaggle notebook and try everything there before I'm certain okay, I have to use this library. Also, if I'm learning something new, I'll go and use Kaggle notebooks because it's interactive. I can see the output immediately, and also I don't have to worry about setting up. If I mess up something, I'll simply close that notebook and start the notebook again. But in Python, if I install some new library and it disturbs, it requires some different version of pandas or numpy, so it will basically overwrite my existing version of pandas and numpy, and because of that my other code or other projects might break which use latest version of pandas or numpy. Okay, so just to avoid all those things, I'll go first learn or test the library on uh, Google Colab or Kaggle Notebook, and once I'm certain okay, now I'll be using this library regularly, so I need to install it locally. That is the point when I'll install it. Okay, also to explore GitHub codes, I generally use Google Colab or Kaggle Notebook. So if there's some code, I'll simply go and run git clone. I'll copy some code from GitHub and then look at the output and explore it. Once I'm certain okay, this is working and this is what I exactly want, so then I'll go and download the git repo. I don't directly go and download the git repo. Okay, next is to test and to implement new ideas or research papers. So if there's some new idea, it's much easy to get started on Kaggle because you already have a lot access to a lot of data sets. I can simply click on add button and add the data set from there, and then I can directly start writing code. But imagine if you're trying to do the same thing in your laptop. First is you'll have to download say 2 GB, 3 GBs or 4 GBs of data in your laptop. Second is you need to install all the requirement.txt, like you'll have to install all the packages from requirement.txt, and then you can start writing code. Oftentimes those code or those scripts are broken, so requirement.txt might not work for you. Okay, so it's much better to start with a environment where you can quickly scrap something and it will not disturb your existing Python environment. Okay, next is for training large models. As I have already shown you, I'll simply make sure while writing the code I'll use ResNet 18, which will take 1 minute or 2 minutes to train. Once I'm certain that this code works, I'll simply replace ResNet 18 with ResNet 101, and then I'll decrease the batch size. So instead of 64, I'll make the batch size 16, and then I'll run it. So for training large models, I'll use Kaggle notebooks, and then I can, once the notebook training is complete, I can go and look at the output section and download my trained model and then use it for inference at in my project or in my research work. Okay, so for training large model, Kaggle is one of the best place, or Kaggle notebooks and Google Colab are really good. Like you don't have to do any setup. Lastly, for long CPU intensive tasks like creating datasets, say for example you want to create a dataset which will go and scrape 10,000 or 20,000 different site URLs, and then a CSV file will be generated for all that data. So for this might take a couple of hours for to run. So I'll write the code, run it for first 5 URLs, and then I'll just make sure if it's working correctly. I'll click on save, and like instead of doing it for first 5 URLs, I'll do it for like all the 10,000 URLs, and I'll then like change the code, and then I'll click on submit button, sorry, save button, and then I'll run the complete code, come after a couple of hours to check if my code is still working, running or not. Okay, and then I'll directly download the CSV file that I got from the net. You don't have to like have your laptop running for all those CPU intensive tasks. And second is last is to host datasets. So when I'm using different systems, say for example, there was a competition where the dataset was well above certain GBs. Sorry, certain 100 GBs. So it was, I guess, 128 or 158 GBs of data. Now, if I download it and store it in my laptop, it's going to be very difficult to work with it. What I did is like basically it was already there on Kaggle. So now it's much easy. At one point in time, I can work on Google Colab. Another model I can train on Kaggle Notebook. So if you have a small data where you are going to work from home and then you will go to your college or your office and then continue working on the same data from your office or college, then it's a good option to host your data on Kaggle and then use it like from both the ends. Rocky, your mic is on. If you can like turn it off. Hello.
Yes, one second.
So if you're going to use different systems, highly recommend that you use try to host your data sets on Kaggle. And next is if you're collaborating with others, it's really important that you host your data sets on Kaggle. This will make it very easy. A single person cannot, nobody can change the data set. That means everyone will be using the same version of the data. Say somebody goes and deletes one image file from the data set. So your version of the data is different from your teammates version of your data and your professor's version of data. Then you will end up getting different results. But if you make it a Kaggle data set, then it's very easy. Anyone who will join the team, all he has to do is create a new notebook, add the data, and pass the URL of your data set. That is all that he need to do. He'll get access to the same data set. That same data set will make sure that everyone is like is following the same baseline or has access to the same data set. That means all the results can be reproduced. I can take someone else's code and run it because I'll have same number of files as he has in his or her data set. Okay. So while collaborating with others, highly recommended to use the dataset features on Kaggle. Okay. Now, this is why you should use Kaggle. So first is it's extremely easy to get started. No setup is required, no hardware is required, and last, it's browser based or it's online. So a lot of people struggle while installing all these things. Setup is extremely difficult. If you have first is getting the hardware. Not a lot of people have access to GPUs. Not a lot of people have access to SSDs. Everyone is using HDD. If you have like a 1 or 2 year old laptop, you will probably have HDD, which are quite slow. So people don't have access to good hardware. And deep learning, machine learning, data science without hardware, it's very difficult. It will test your patience, and it often requires you cannot do much without the hardware that it requires. So if you don't have the hardware, it is going to be a difficult task. Okay. So first is not a lot of people have access to hardware. Second is even if you have access to hardware, installing all those things is a very tedious task. So I remember in my BTech project, I was trying to run a Keras model in Raspberry Pi. So to install everything, it took me there was no version of Keras or no source code of Keras which I can directly install on an ARM based architecture. So I had to build it completely from scratch. To do that, it took me 3 days. Okay, I didn't know C++, and a lot of things were failing, a lot of things were crashing. It took me 3 days to install Keras in my Raspberry Pi. Even OpenCV and a lot of other libraries which are highly dependent upon your operating system, your hardware, they can be really difficult to set up and like to run them. Okay, so setup can be really difficult task. I already have a GPU in my laptop, but you'll have to make sure that you install proper or compatible version of CUDA. Then you'll have to install compatible version of cuDNN. Okay, and then you'll have to install a compatible version of Intel's MKL library. Once all these things are compatible and they work with each other, then on top of all that, you'll have to install TensorFlow, PyTorch, Keras, and all these libraries. And then some oftentimes these libraries don't detect that you have GPUs. So setup can be very tedious for data science. It's a very tedious job. Here, it's just a few clicks away from. It's just a few click away. All you have to do is just click on the accelerator and select the GPU. You have to change the language. So just click on language, select Python or R, and you don't have to worry about any other thing. Okay. Last thing is, since it's browser based, since it's online, that means you can access it from anywhere. If you have all this thing, all the setup ready in your system, you have all the hardware requirements. If all the hardware requirements are met, then also your system or your files, your hardware won't be accessible from anywhere. You'll have to still always stick to your desk. So being browser based in this world has its own advantages. So you can access it from anywhere and from any device. So you can write uh, like you can participate in Kaggle competitions, or you can write code in Kaggle notebooks even with your iPad. Anything with a browser will work. You can open Kaggle notebooks in your mobile phones as well. The typing experience won't be that good, but still you can do it. The possibility is there. Okay, so anything which has a browser can run your Kaggle notebooks. Okay, now this is perfect for beginners because you can focus on learning. You don't have to struggle with the hardware requirement. You don't have to struggle with the software requirement and all those other things. You can focus on learning. So you can focus on writing the actual code. You can focus on learning how to actually use GPU rather than installing it or setting it up. I know these things are important. It's important that you know how to install uh, CUDA or cuDNN and MKL and all those different libraries. It's also important to learn how to install Conda and other stuff. But I think you can learn them later on. If you are just starting with data science, it's important that you focus on actual learning rather than messing around with the things that you are going to do once or twice in your complete journey. So you can learn these things much later in your journey. As a beginner, you should focus on the actual learning, that is actually writing the code, learning the concepts, learning the ideas. And Kaggle allows you to do that. You don't have to set up anything. There's no hardware requirement. All you need is a Gmail account, and that is it to get you started. Okay, so this myth about Kaggle is equal to competition, that is like completely false. There are tons of different things that you can do with it. Not just these things, that no setup is required, no hardware is required, browser based, but these are all the different advantages that or different reasons to use Kaggle. Again, if you are testing some new libraries or learning something new, try it on Kaggle first, and once you feel confident with it, then install it. Then if you have some CPU intensive task or GPU intensive task, try to use Kaggle, because fortunately you might not have access to, like unfortunately you might not have access to GPUs or like other big storage devices. So instead of downloading all the data set in your laptop, keep it running for like say overnight and stuff, it's recommended that you use Kaggle notebooks. And if you are going to collaborate with your like teammates, try to use Kaggle notebooks. And if you are going to switch between systems, say you have multiple systems at your home, or you are switching between your uh, office computer and your home computer, then this is a good uh, solution for it. Okay, so these are all the reasons why you should use Kaggle notebooks, and it's perfect for beginners. Don't overwhelm yourself with things that will not add much value to your learning process. Okay, you can learn them anytime, and the like the good thing is you have to do it only once or twice, so you don't have to master it. Okay, so yeah, that was all that was there for datasets as well as notebooks. Now we'll switch gears and move towards competition, I'll briefly discuss Kaggle competitions. So, okay, as soon as you start Kaggle, you can see there's this tab called compete. You can click here, then you will see all the active competitions. These are all the competitions which are going on. These are all the competitions which I did in the past, and then these are pinned competitions, and then these are the competitions that I have hosted. So these are all my competitions. If you scroll a bit like lower, then you will see active competitions, completed competitions, and in-class competitions. For most of these competitions, you will see there are prize money associated with them. So if you win these competitions, this is the prize money that you will take home. Okay? Now, these competitions are actually very difficult to win. These are some real-time problems that industries or big giants like Microsoft, Google, Uber, Tesla are facing. So these are some serious real-time problems, and hence they have such a huge prize money associated with it. Data scientists across the globe compete for months to solve these problems, and then best solutions are rewarded with the prize money. They are called in the respective offices of the companies, and then they discuss their solutions, and these solutions are actually deployed. Okay, so if you are participating in Kaggle competitions and your solution is selected, you're winning some competition. That means you are having a real impact in the society. Okay, so yeah, now you should not be overwhelmed because of the difficulties of this competition. You should not be like, it should not stop you from participating in Kaggle competitions, because there's tons of learning that comes from just participating in Kaggle competitions. You don't have to win a medal, you don't have to win the prize money, but the best thing you can do is participate in Kaggle competition. Now, Kaggle has a lot of different competitions for with different levels of complexity. So you can see there's something called playground competitions, which are for complete beginners. There are some competitions for research. There are some competitions which are hosted by the recruiters. So they'll host a few competitions, and people who end up winning the competition will be hired. Okay. There are some competitions for complete beginners who are just starting with machine learning. So if you're starting with machine learning, go and start with getting started competitions. If you know some basic knowledge of machine learning, then you should start with playground competitions. And then if you're interested in research, participate in research competition, recruitment, analytical, masters, and features. These are all different types of competitions. You can see the labels here. Okay, so this is featured competition, this is indoor competition, and all this. Sorry, this is research competition. So these are the playground competitions. Okay, so Kaggle has different complexities for competitions, and based on your current like skill set, you can select these competitions and start working with them. Okay, so for example, this is a competition. I'll click on it. As soon as you open a competition, there are a few things that you should look after. The title of the competition, and this is the subtitle which gives you most of the idea. Determine if two products are the same by their images. This is the competition. So you will be given multiple images, and then you will have to determine if basically it's the same product or not. Okay, so first thing you should do is click on overview and read all these things here. So this description will give you a brief overview about the context under which this competition is hosted. So they'll tell ki we are so and so company, we are faced with these challenges, this is the amount of the data that we handle every day, and we are the leading platform in Asia and Taiwan. Now in this competition, you can apply your machine learning skill to predict when item are same product. This will help us to save these things, and so you get a rough idea or the overview of the competition. Next thing you should read is evaluation. So this tells you how the competition hosts are going to evaluate your submissions. That means how you will be ranked or how will your model be tested. So they'll be using F1 score. You can go and read on Wikipedia more about F1 score. Then they say this is the format of submission file. It should be named submission.csv. The first column will be posting IDs, second column will be matches, and then this is how you should specify everything. Okay, next is timeline. So you can see the timeline. It started on 9th of March, and it will like you can enter the competition by 4th of May, and the competition will close on 11th of May. Okay. Now, next is the prize money. So $15,000 for first place, then $10,000 and $5,000. So here you see the total of first place, second place, and third place. And last is code requirement. This tells you what your solution, what criteria your solution should meet. So first is, if you're using a CPU only notebook, that it cannot run more than 9 hours. It should be completed. Like, you cannot write a code which gives you the best score, but it will take 19 hours to run. Such solutions will be rejected. If you're using GPU notebooks, then only 2 hours is allowed, and your internet access should be disabled. That means here you should disable your internet access. If the internet access for your notebook is on, then your submission will not be considered. This is done so as to prevent you from downloading some solution from outside. Okay. And then you can do all these things. This is another requirement. Submission.csv should be named. Submission file should be named submission.csv. Okay. So this is very important that you read or go through the overview section end to end. This will give you a good idea of all the various things that you need to know even before you start the competition. Okay. Once you are done with this, I'll recommend you go and read about data. This will give you all the details about the data. So here you can see the data size is 1.8 GB approximately. There's this folder called test images, train images, and these are all the CSV files. Now you can come and read here that train and test CSVs will have these columns and what each of these columns indicate. Okay. And then submission file, what it will have these two columns and what each of these two columns indicate. And then train images and test images, there are approximately 70,000 images in the hidden test set, and here in this data set you have approximately 38,000 images in train. So you get all the information about your data, and based on this you can make a good guess of what model to use, whether it's a NLP problem or whether it's a computer vision problem or it's a tabular dataset problem. And based on the submission evaluation, you can say whether are you going to use a regression model or a classification model, and all those different things. Okay. Next is this leaderboard, where you can post your submissions and you can see your score. These are some rules, so you have to accept the rules. It is done automatically if you try to participate in the competition, and this is where you'll find all your submissions. Okay. So these are all the things that you can check. I'll highly recommend, make sure you go through all the overview section, all the data section. This is very important even before you start with the competition. Okay. Once you have done that, you have to click on code. Now, one way of starting with the competition is to start with a new notebook. So you can simply click on new notebook. This will create a new notebook like this. Like, it will be completely empty, and this data set will be automatically added. So here we have added dataset Shopee product matching manually, but if you click on new notebook here, it will automatically add this dataset. Okay. Then you can start by importing pandas, importing torch, importing TensorFlow and other stuff, and start loading your data, start performing your EDA, start building the models, and start doing other stuff. That is one approach. Another approach is you can simply search for starter. Okay. So a lot of people publish starter notebooks. These are basically bare minimum code to get you started as quickly as possible. So I'll come here and see if I can find a good starter notebook. There are a lot of starter notebooks, and usually go for the one which has the most votes. So you can see Shopee in-depth EDA one stop. Okay. SiamesNet, then EDA starter, EDA, then unmatched, and all these different things. So this is one notebook which also has a score option. That means the notebook can be used to make submissions. So now you can go and select one of these notebooks. I can simply say, okay, I want to start with this notebook. You can select any notebook. Now I can click here, copy and edit. So what this will do is, I'll show you. Once I click on it, it will make a copy of this notebook for me, and now I can directly start working with it. This is really good because it will automatically add all the data sets that were there in the notebook. So if I'm publishing a notebook, I'll add say 10 data sets. The person who will clone it, he'll automatically get all the 10 data sets. Another thing is, all the settings for accelerator, internet, language, they also will be preserved. So you will get it directly. Now I got access to this notebook. Now I can make changes and see if it's working. So I can do this. I can run this. And okay, so these are all the files. And if I want to understand something, while I was reading the code, I didn't understand what this function is doing or what this subplots.adjust method is. So now I can take this code, create a new cell above, paste it here, and indent it properly. Now it takes a label group. So how do I get label groups? So I'll come here, and if there's somewhere where, okay, label group 0. So I'll copy this piece of code, create a new cell. I'll say this, and then I'll have to say label group 0. So I'll again come here and create a new cell, and I'll say label, okay, label group 0 is equal to label group 0. So basically I'm taking the first element and then I'm assigning it to this. Now why I'm assigning it to label group? Because here I'll be using label group. This is what is passed as an argument to the function. So hence this is the reason why I'm doing this thing. So I can run this, and see the output. So label group is not defined. So I'll have to see what label group. Okay, I'll have to see where it is defined. But what I can do is I can start interacting with the code. This is very difficult. If you read someone's code, either it will be a .py file and you don't know all the libraries that are used. You will have to go and check all the imports, install them manually, and then you'll have to like do it. When you run it, you'll see you don't have the data set. That is another problem that you'll have to face. Then you'll see ki the version of pandas used in your notebook and in the other person's notebook were different. Hence you get some error. So it's very difficult. Same goes if you read someone else's code in GitHub. Same problems because you don't have access to the environment where the code was executed. But here you can directly just click on copy and edit button and start interacting with the notebook. This is super powerful if you want to learn something new. So I can go search for, I'll click here, I'll go search for, say I don't know anything about BERT. So I'll simply come here, I'll, instead of this, I'll say BERT. Okay, so now I'll see there's this notebook which is using efficient and B0 and BERT. So now I don't know anything about BERT. What I can do is simply click on this notebook. I'll start going through it. So it's using PyTorch, which is good because like I use PyTorch. I don't know TensorFlow. So I'll go through it. And wherever I see the BERT code, okay, this is something auto tokenizer. How do I get auto tokenizer? So probably I have imported it beforehand. So okay, I cannot find auto tokenizer anywhere here. I'll simply press auto tokenizer. stopwords are. This is basically a this is basically a set. Okay? This is basically a set. So I can say length 192 words in stopwords. If I want to add something, I'll add more of it. Okay? So, you can add another set and then assign it back to stopwords. Now I'm playing with the code, and once I understand the complete code, I'll submit it, and then what I'll do is I'll come back here in the competition, and then I'll go and read the discussions. I'll read everything that is there, and then if some person here suggests you should use k-fold cross validation because the model has a lot of imbalance class, then I'll come here and see what cross validation technique I'm using, and I'll update it. Then I'll again come here and see, okay, somebody is using, instead of BERT, they are using SBERT. So I'll come here, instead of BERT, I'll add SBERT, and so on. Okay, so you go read a lot of stuff. So a lot of people will also share research papers, blogs, libraries, and other stuff in the discussion. So you have to make sure you go through all the discussions, all the posts that are there in this competition or there for this competition. You will end up learning a lot. You will read a lot of research papers, you will read a lot of new blogs, you will end up learning a lot of new libraries and all these different things. And the amount of learning that you get out of each competition is immense. Like you can learn much more in a month than you will learn in an year if you participate in a Kaggle competition. Okay, so this is a brief overview about Kaggle competitions, and this is how you can use discussions to like learn a lot of new things. If you have some doubts, something is not working, you can search for that discussion here. And if there's suppose you have a doubt about using TPUs, okay, you don't know how to use TPUs, so you can simply type TPU and see if somebody has already asked the question or not. So noob question about TPUs. Okay, so now you can see, okay, this is there. Now you can go and what other people have suggested. But imagine you don't find that topic, the topic that you are looking for. You can create your own topic. Click here, find the topic, describe it in detail what you're struggling with, and everyone who participates in the competition, they'll try to help you out. So this is very powerful way of engaging and learning from the community. Okay, so if you don't know anything, ask about it. If you don't know anything and it's already there, go read and learn about it and try to come back and implement it in your starter notebook. Okay, or another approach is starting with a fresh notebook. There are advantages and disadvantages to both the approach, and it's a personal choice what approach you want to follow. But my advice will be, if you're directly starting with a starter notebook, I highly recommend that you have some basic knowledge of whatever thing that is used. Okay? So if they are using PyTorch or deep learning, you should have some basic knowledge of how PyTorch models are built, where they are defined, how data loaders and data sets are defined, and how you train them. Without that knowledge, it will be very difficult to include or add extra piece of code in the code itself. You had to understand the code end to end, then only you can take someone else's code and add it back to your code. Okay? So do it only if you have some experience, else you will end up like feeling discouraged कि code नहीं समझ में आ रहा है, क्या हो रहा है, कैसे हो रहा है. But so that is one advice, slightly for advanced people, to use directly start with the starter notebook. If you are just starting, try to read a lot of EDA books and try to start with a clean notebook. Okay? But it's, at the end of the day, it's a personal choice. Okay? So this was all about competitions and discussions. Now, okay, the summary. Before we move to the summary, one last piece of advice would be that don't be overwhelmed or don't be afraid by all these big players in the competitions. This is for sure that you will not win the first competition that you participate in, but try to understand that there is nothing to lose if you participate. The worst thing that can happen is you won't win a medal, or you will get the last rank. Okay, but it's okay, you will end up learning something. There's tons of knowledge that you gain after each competition. Okay, So I'll highly encourage everyone to start with Kaggle compressions. Okay. For working with Kaggle compression, it's very important that you have some knowledge of data science machine learning. Without that knowledge, there's no meaning in going and participating in compression because you don't understand anything. But once that foundational knowledge is there, you know name of couple of algorithms, you know how to import models, build them, train them, you know some basic idea of how the pipeline looks for a machine learning project, then you are in good position to start with Kaggle compressions. My advice would be to, as soon as you start with Kaggle, go here in compete section and start with a few playground competitions. Come here and say playground. These are all the playground competitions which are ongoing. Sorry. So these are all the playground competitions which are active. These are all the playground competitions which have completed. Okay, so there are lots of playground competitions, and then there are in-class competitions. So you can participate in any of them, but I'll highly recommend that you participate in one or two Kaggle competition, playground competition. What this will allow you to do is, you will understand how to go through all these things. You'll understand how to read the code. You'll understand how to use discussions. You'll understand how to make submissions. Okay. Once you are well acquainted with the platform, Kaggle, all the different feature it has to offer, all the different tools and that you can use in the platform. Once you are well acquainted with it, making submissions using GPUs, using TPUs, Kaggle notebooks, making submissions, creating submissions.csv file, using discussions, leaderboard, and all those things. Once you are comfortable with this, I'll recommend you directly start with ongoing competitions. You directly start with ongoing competitions. Whatever be the competition, directly start with it. You will end up learning something. You will never feel confident about your skills. You will never feel confident about your skills. Okay. So don't wait for the perfect time to get started with Kaggle competitions. Once you have completed basic machine learning, so don't start with Kaggle competitions as soon as you are done with Python. Complete basic machine learning, and once you have all the some basic knowledge of working pipeline of machine learning, then it's good time you should start with competitions. One mistake which I personally made was, I waited for long enough and I participated in a lot of playground competitions. So if you see that, okay, these are 7 competitions that I participated in. Now 3 of them are playground competitions. Then this was a research competition. So I and Pranav made it to top 17. This was Rancer competition. I and Pranav made it to top 16%. Then mechanics of action, we won a gold, bronze medal, top 8%, and global wit competition. Again, I worked with Rajat and Rudraksh, and we won another bronze medal, top 9%. Okay. Now these competitions are for lifetime and they'll not end. Like 5 years ago they were started. So these are in-class competitions, so don't worry about them. But this is another playground competition which I participated in, and this is another competition which I'm working on now. It has 24 days to go before the final deadline. I'm in top 8%. So if you see, I participated in three, four playground competitions, then 3 in-class competitions. That means 7 uh, competitions where it's for beginners. Out of 13 competitions, 7 competitions are for complete beginners. Okay. So uh, I wasted a lot of times working with playground competitions. Once I seriously started writing, participating in competitions, first 2 competitions were not that good. Basically, these are my last 2 competitions. But first 2 competitions, I was able to win a bronze medal in both of them. Okay. And this is a research competition, so you don't get any medal for this. But this is my 5th competition, and high chances that I'll end up winning a medal here as well. Okay. So as you can see that I wasted a lot of time in playground. Jabki as soon as I started, I was able to get a couple of bronze medals. So you will never feel confident about your skills. The best thing you can do is start with the competitions right away. Once you have completed a few playground competitions to get yourself acquainted with the platform, then don't participate in 7, 8, 12, 15 playground competitions. Just do 1 or 2 and get started with the actual ongoing competitions. You'll end up learning a lot, and you don't know, but you might end up winning a medal as well. Okay, so yeah, this is one personal mistake which I'll recommend others not to do. And yeah, towards the summary, so notebooks, no setup required, easy to use notebooks with GPU and TPU hardware accelerations. Okay, Kaggle datasets, free unlimited storage for your datasets. Okay, and it's online, so you can use it from anywhere. Next is competitions, learn from the best in the world. So a lot of good data scientists, they are very active on Kaggle, and if you ask questions, they might answer. If somebody else asks some question, you can read their answers, you can read their notebooks to learn the best practices in the industry. So you will be learning from the best in the world. Okay, and last is discussions. Discussions are often a good place for a lot of blogs, for a lot of ideas, for a lot of research papers, GitHub code, and etc. So you will find a lot of good resources where you can learn new things from. Okay, so discussions are another great place to learn things. Now, yeah, thank you everyone for your time. Before we actually conclude, if you have any questions, you can ask me now. Hello, guys, you can unmute your mic, and if you have any questions, do let me know. Okay, great. So just remember the important things we have discussed. And also, Kaggle is not equal to competitions. It's a platform for a lot of different things. No matter at what stage of data science journey you are in, Kaggle is a place where you can find some value. Okay? So yeah, try to use the platform, and hope this session was helpful. Everyone was able to learn something new, and hope enough people are convinced that they'll start using Kaggle from now on. Okay, even if you're learning Python, try to use Kaggle notebooks instead of installing Anaconda and then creating your own, running your own Jupyter instance. Try using Kaggle notebooks. Okay, and yeah, it was worth your time. Okay? Everyone was able to learn something new. So yeah, with this, we'll end this session. Thank you so much for your time, and hope it was a good learning experience for all of you. Okay? If you still have some questions and you don't like after the session, feel free to DM me on Discord. I'll be really happy to answer those questions. Okay? So thank you so much, everyone. You may leave the voice channel. Okay? Bye bye.